I recently conquered the entire world in 49 turns with Vlad on max difficulty and collected well over 100 tips to share with you in this video. Timestamps are included below to help you find what you need. And let's get started. You can expand your empire faster by sacking settlements and moving beyond them to attack and take another settlement, leaving the newly sacked settlement as easy pickings for a solo lord or one-turn recruitable crap stack to swing by and clean it up next turn. This keeps your strongest, most expensive armies moving forward while the cheaper ones handle the busy work. You'll know you're doing things right if your income stays negative for most of the campaign. This means the only way you can make money is through war. Fight as often as you can. You should sack or loot every settlement you come across and be careful where you spend your money. Most buildings should be income-producing buildings to help ease the bleeding. Once your starting vampire has the Vortex spell leveled up, you can split her off with Vlad as a two-man doom stack. I was able to take out the quest battle by using Vlad to tank and group the enemy troops up, drop the Vortex spell for huge damage, and the vampire can do some light combat like running down archers and artillery. This battle was won without a single point of HP lost. Don't waste troops by putting them in Vlad's army, as he doesn't need it. You can take a walled settlement in a single turn, even without a siege attacker unit in your army. You'll need to make sure your army is weak enough to be attacked, or the garrison strong enough to sally out. If you win the battle and wipe out the garrison, you'll have the option to occupy it without ever needing siege equipment. If you're lucky, you'll get the option to auto-resolve and guarantee the garrison is wiped out. Siege attacker units are uncommon for a lot of factions, especially the vampire counts. An army with a siege attacker in it should take priority during the planning phase over every other army. Get that siege attacker army to as many walled settlements as quickly as possible, with plenty of support armies tagging along to help. Sometimes it's best to not waste movement points attacking an enemy if you know they'll attack you at the end of your turn. Make yourself weak enough to bait them into attacking you and make sure you're in their movement range. The AI loves to attack forced march armies and will go out of their way to fight those battles. This will free up those strong armies to move and take settlements more often. When you've conquered territory into a corner or far away from the next enemy and it will take you many turns to move back into a good position, it's best to disband the army and rehire them on the front lines instead. Lords can take 5 turns to re-enter the hiring pool if you disband them, or 3 turns if you reset their perks. Most armies can easily be replaced on the front lines with the Raise Dead mechanic. Channeling stance for the vampire counts works differently from other races. It not only recharges your winds of magic, but can also allow you to replenish troops in neutral and hostile territory. You have to be in territory that doesn't cause your army attrition though, so it won't help you avoid attrition damage like tunneling or in-camp stance for other factions. If you have a rebellion in a settlement that is still under construction, like a recently colonized settlement, then you will instantly lose that settlement when the rebellion spawns, since there's no garrison troops present. Plan accordingly by hiring a temporary lord and a few troops to defend the rebellion, and let the settlement finish building. When fighting against wood elves in a siege, do not push into them with your army. Instead, use your heroes and lords to bait them into rushing you. Their archers will tear you to shreds, but their melee troops are stupid enough to charge by themselves, allowing you to pick them off 2 or 3 at a time. You can even bait their archers until they have no ammo left, then easily crush them after. Patience is key. One of the best strategies using the vampire counts is the Undead Blob. Have a master necromancer leading the army, move every unit on top of each other, lock the formation, and move them into the enemy. The goal is to keep a tight circle, heal units that are taking too much damage, and slowly grind your enemy into the ground. It works even better with a couple flanking units on the outside to constantly cycle charge the enemy. This decisive defeat was won with only 32 losses in total. It's really OP. Dire wolves and fell bats should only be used in direct combat against extremely weak units like archers and artillery. They can also be used against stronger units that are very close to breaking, and charging with these will force the rout. They can also be great units to run down fleeing enemy units. Outside of these use cases, these units should be held in reserve and should avoid direct melee combat at all costs since they're too fragile to be useful. The woods can be a fantastic place to set up for the vampire counts. Fighting in the woods gives a big debuff to larger units and cavalry, while the trees have a high chance of blocking projectiles. Be aware, it can cause issues if you have large units or cavalry trying to be the anvil, but the trade-off is usually worth it. When fighting against an army that doesn't crumble from low morale, you should leave a unit or 2 alive so you can have more time to get heals off. It's not unusual for even a difficult battle to end with very few losses. Don't forget, Enemy units with 10% or less of their entities left will still be dead after the battle, even if you don't take them to 0. It's possible to pull in an ally or neutral army into a battle if the other faction is also at war with your enemy. You'll have a few options: help them win the fight, or sit back and let them obliterate each other. If you're planning on going to war with the neutral faction soon, then it's best to let them fight for you and weaken their army while also preserving your own troops. If you're up against a lot of ranged units in a siege defense, you can retreat to the back of the map and build strong walls everywhere. Enemy ranged units will often dump their entire ammo stack trying to clear a 12,000 HP wall instead of going into melee, making the actual fight at the end much easier. Against very strong armies, it's a good idea to hide your main force and use fast units like mounted lords, cavalry, and flying units to harass and split the enemy army up. When the enemy is sufficiently spread out, then you can show your main force and draw some of the enemy to them. This will make it even easier for your fast harassment units to pick off isolated units, and your main force will have an easier time fending off their partial attack. When using tiny armies like a single lord and hero, the most important stats you need to have are movement speed and shield HP. If you can outrun the fastest enemy unit and you have even a small amount of shielding, you can wipe out nearly any army in the game with some patience. Go into battle, do damage until your shield runs low, retreat to recharge the shield, and head back in to repeat. This can be sped up significantly with a vortex spell, in this case from a vampire hero. You can easily take out thousands of enemy troops with this tiny stack. The biggest threat to the Death Blob strategy are units that do splash damage like spellcasters, flamethrowers, artillery, and such. When going up against these types of units, have a plan to deal with them before they are able to shred your blob, even if it means sacrificing a unit, because it's better to lose one unit than an entire army. Sometimes the best tactic during a siege is to distract the main defending force and go after the capture points in the rear. Bog the defenders down in one location, then send fast-moving units or units with stock to break the gates further down the wall. As you capture points, the enemy will send units to defend, so it's best to work in groups of 2 units or more to overwhelm any defenders. Eventually, you'll either capture all points and win the battle, or you'll spread the enemy so thin you'll earn an easy win. When facing off against a large force of cavalry or fast-moving high-mass units like ogres, it's best to hide your harassment units inside the blob. Cavalry and ogres will eventually catch your fast-moving units and they'll be obliterated. It's also incredibly dangerous for flying lords and heroes to get surrounded, since you won't be able to move or fly out. If you have a summon available, use it to buy some time and space. Otherwise, that unit is dead 100% of the time. When fighting a tough siege, it can help to spread the enemy thin by spawning units all over the map, forcing the enemy to cover the walls near them. You can then shift your forces where you plan to attack and use the other locations to launch raids, or just keep the enemy from consolidating fully for the big fight. This is especially helpful with faster flying units that can reposition very quickly. When fighting against the Skaven, try to focus on bringing enemy units down to 0 instead of trying to rout their entire army. They will naturally rout and return several times, and their army strength is in this chaotic mess, while our army thrives in orderly blobs and organized extinction. Once their army fully routs, it will be difficult to kill enough units quickly to get the corpse pile, but if you let them fight and focus on only fleeing units, you'll have no problem getting to that limit. When the enemy is expecting reinforcements, you'll usually have a couple minutes to harass without them reacting too much. Use this time to pick off important enemies like casters or artillery, but be sure to get out of the danger zone before reinforcements come, as they will attack and surround you. If you want to do more with your lords and heroes in tough battles, you'll need to learn how to micro every action they do. If you're getting chased by an enemy that's faster, you can avoid most damage by clicking left and right furiously to stop most of their attacks. If you're trying to assassinate enemy units, click attack when you're very close to them. Wait for the attack to land and quickly disengage by clicking away and repeating. The AI knows when you've issued an attack command and will act differently, but if you're constantly clicking off of the attack command, you'll disguise most of your attacks and avoid their defensive behaviors like turning to attack or running to friendly units to hide. The other threat to blobs besides AoE damage is overwhelming ranged unit armies. Sometimes you'll have to leave the safety of the blob and catch enemy range units out in the open and keep them from shooting. It's more important to get every range unit into melee combat than it is to get the right matchup. Just stop them from shooting and move freed up units around as the enemies begin to rout. There are several types of heals in the game, but the vampire counts have one of the strongest. Invocation of Nehek will not only recover lost HP, but once all units are back to full health, it will bring back dead units. As long as the unit isn't at the max healing cap, they can recover 100% of their troops. You can also overcast this spell and it will heal up to 4 units at a time. Spell intensity is a percentage modifier that increases the strength of spells. This works for all spells: damage, healing, buffs, debuffs, etc. For example, a heal can recover more HP per cast with an increase to spell intensity. You can get spell intensity through items like the Scroll of Power or Black Periapt, or through traits like Master of the Black Arts or Intelligent. The Pit of Shade's Vortex spell should be used overcast instead of regular cast. It costs 12 winds of magic for a regular cast and only 7 more to overcast it, but the damage output is very similar, saving you about 5 winds of magic. Be careful with overcasting though, as it can damage your caster. Another tip is to have a shield item to tank the overcast damage entirely. Invocation of Nehek heals a single unit as a regular cast and 4 units as an overcast, but costs less than double. If you have more than 1 unit that needs healing, be sure to overcast this spell. The biggest downside is you can only choose one of the 4 units that will get the healing, so you might not heal the desired units first, but in general it's more efficient to overcast this spell often. Spirit Leech is one of the strongest spells at our disposal for knocking out high HP single units like lords, heroes, and monsters. Typically, this spell costs 6 winds of magic to cast, but with Life Leech that cost goes down to 3.5. Add in a Black Periapt arcane item and it's literally free to cast. Use the spell off cooldown until all lords and strong single units are down. Zombie summons can be helpful for delaying and distracting enemy units, but they can also do a tremendous amount of damage if used correctly. One of my favorite combos is a zombie summon with Dire Wolves. Dire Wolves can dish out damage, but lose in direct melee contact even against weak archers. Use a flying caster to summon zombies on a vulnerable unit. Send the Dire Wolves in to clean them up and enjoy an easy win. Wind of Death can be an amazing spell, but it's often misused. Its best use case is near an object that can reflect the spell back and forth like a wall or building. Overcasting only costs 6 winds of magic more for 3 times the damage, although the increase isn't armor piercing like the base spell. It can easily zero out low armor units in a single cast. Raise the Dead can be a great way to bait the enemy into using expensive spells or limited ammo. Miners with Blast Charge can do a ton of damage to a death blob, but a single cast can drain that ammo and even cause self-harm on the enemy's side. This tactic is especially helpful for casters with a flying mount, since you can hit any point in the line and get out safely. While zombie summons can be great for distraction, they don't do much damage on their own. Instead, Overcast Raise the Dead to summon skeleton warriors and melt enemy units like artillery and archers. If your caster is mounted, be sure to fly close enough to keep high leadership or the skeleton's combat effectiveness will suffer. And if you've got a shield item equipped, you won't have to worry about miscasting since the shield can tank the damage. If you don't have any anti-large, then Gaze of Nagash can be incredibly helpful. Most lords and heroes can be wiped out with 10 casts or so of this spell, but even taking them down to 50% health or less can be invaluable since their combat effectiveness will be diminished greatly, and you can chip them down the rest of the way with the Blob. If you're attacking a walled settlement without a siege attacker, you can still get some value from the lost turn by going into channeling stance. Besieging doesn't cancel the channeling, and you'll end up with extra winds of magic next turn when the siege equipment is ready. Did you know you can fill up your magic reserves to max mid-battle? If your Winds of Magic bank is full, and you use an item that recharges Winds of Magic, it will start to fill up the reserve tank. If your Winds of Magic bank maxes out at 70, then you can fill up the reserves up to 70 as well, making it easy to save up for burst uses during critical parts of the battle. The Necromancer Lord should be the main early game lords that you hire. They're incredibly effective with only a few levels and the right build. Start with a point into Invocation of Nehek, then Curse of the Undead, 2 points into Raise the Dead, and you'll be able to punch well above your army's weight with heals and summons. Lord of the Scourge increases healing cap for the whole army, allowing you to tank for even longer. Master of the Undead increases your cast range for Raise Dead, allowing you to summon skeletons on most range units without leaving the blob. And finally, Wind of Death is great for clearing out grouped up enemies. They also get mounts very early, a horse at level 8, a flying mount at level 10, and some corpse cards that you should pretty much be avoiding at all times. If you're not using a Necro Lord, it's recommended to attach a Necromancer hero to the army to supplement. They have a very similar build with heals, summons, and Wind of Death, but do not increase the healing cap for the army and give up the flying mount, making them less versatile in the late game. They still fulfill their role in healing and nuking, so fighting a long melee battle is made significantly easier with one in the army. The Vampire Lord is a jack of all combat skills, but master of none. His combat skills are solid and can be boosted with the combat stat line. His spell line is identical to the Necromancer, but doesn't have the passive aura heal Master of the Dead, the healing cap boost, or the extended summoning range. His damage is mostly non-armor piercing until you get the Zombie Dragon unlock, meaning items are critical in order to fight against combat-focused lords. It's still worth hiring a few of these guys though, since they can tank well early on and with good items can turn into lord killers. The main goal with the Vampire Lord should be to reach level 18 as soon as possible to unlock the Zombie Dragon, which has the Siege Attacker trait. The Strigoi Ghoul King is an incredibly powerful lord, but often struggles in the early game without support. While he does have a full spell line, he's not a strong caster as the spells don't get upgraded like the other lords. No final upgrade to reduce winds of magic or further reduction to cooldown. His true power is in melee combat, but again needs quite a bit of support to perform well since he has no mount until level 20 and will struggle to catch mounted enemies until then. With that said, once he's in melee, he will tear pretty much everybody to shreds. He has high armor piercing damage, has a passive heal at level 1, and really high melee attack and defense stats. Babysit him until he reaches level 20 and he'll be an absolute menace to deal with. Of the 5 Bloodline Lords, the Necrarch stands out as the best overall given his versatility. He's the best spellcaster by far due to the mix of spells and passive buffs. Spirit Leech costs 6 winds of magic to cast, but after Life Leech passive, you get 2.5 back, so your net cost is only 3.5 winds of magic. It also procs Curse of Undeath every time, meaning your whole army will heal and restore entities while you do damage. Nehekara's Bloodline reduces the cost of Invocation of Nehek down to 4 winds of magic, grants 3 more casts of Raise the Dead, and reduces miscast base chance, which vampire magic uses all the time. On top of that, you get the Purple Sun, one of the best vortex spells, as well as Greater Arcane Conduit, making every single spell do 15% more damage, or 15% more heals. And even more, you can still build the Necrarch as a melee combatant with half of the combat line, a massive protective spell that you can use every 90 seconds, and a Zombie Dragon at level 18. If you only hire one lord the whole game, you could get away with sticking to the Necrarch. Sadly, you can only hire 3 of them. Of the 4 remaining bloodlines, the Lahmian is the next best. She has solid spells like Penumbral, Pendulum, and Winds of Death, but where she really shines is in melee combat. She has the full combat line, as well as special abilities like Seduction, which reduces enemy melee attack and speed, and Transfix, which increases speed and damage resistance, while also reducing enemy leadership. She's got passives like Perfect Vigor, a bonus versus infantry of plus 25, and gets a Dragon Zombie at level 18 for better 1v1 skills and the Siege Attacker trait. The Lahmian Lord isn't as versatile as the Necrarch, but she can still fill the same role. The Carstein Lord and Blood Dragon Lords are next, tied for 3rd place. They don't have amazing spell combos like the Necrarch and lack ability boosts like the Lahmian Lords, but are still solid. The Carstein Lord has some unique boosts like boosting most beasts and being able to summon a Vargulf. The Blood Dragon can boost offensive stats and cavalry, or grave guards and defensive stats, but not much else. One cool thing about the Dragon Lord though, you can take Wind of Death and max it out by level 4, which is the fastest of any lord in the game. Finally, the Strigoi Bloodline. While I think this is the worst of the 5 Bloodline Lords, it's not because it's a bad unit. It has better stats than the standard Strigoi, with offensive or defensive boosts, and can make Crypt Horrors or Crypt Ghouls better. The problem is the standard Strigoi is amazing already at what it does. So unlocking the Strigoi bloodline deprives you of the other bloodlines that you can't normally get. If a regular Strigoi can go toe-to-toe with the best legendary lords in the game, then what benefit does having a slightly stronger one do for you? The Banshee is an amazing hero that excels at taking out single unit entities. It has 55% physical resistance naturally without any items, and over 350 armor-piercing damage, but lacks a mount upgrade at higher levels. The skill tree is very sparse, so be sure to equip great items that increase armor-piercing damage further, and boost melee defense and ward save, making the Banshee nearly unkillable. The biggest downside to using these heroes is how difficult it is to increase their numbers, since they can only be increased in a province capital with a tier 4 building. The Wight King is a standard melee specialist hero with amazing armor and a shield, decent melee attack and defense stats, and a better upgrade tree than the Banshee. With both heroic killing blow and deadly onslaught unlocked, plus a high damage item, I've seen this hero's weapon strength hit 1000 damage for a 30-second burst. He also gets a mount very early on, making him versatile, but again, you can't get too many of these heroes in the field since you need a province capital to increase their limit and a tier 4 building upgrade. You can get more items from a single battle by having multiple lords participate. Each army will have its own chance to steal items from the enemy, as well as find magic items post-battle. You can increase your chances even further by letting some enemy units survive, and running them down a second time. While you can win the first quest battle with just Vlad and the vampire, you'll likely need at least one more unit to help you for the second one. In my run, I used a Vargeist to help out. Hide Vlad in the woods, use your vampire's first spell to clear out the bats, and the vortex spell to clear out the dire wolves and ghouls. The graveguards will respawn infinitely until the lord is dead, so don't waste too much winds of magic on them. Use Vlad to split the remaining large units up, focus down the crypt horrors separately, and then throw everything you've got at the Strigoi. He's got tons of regen and 13,000 health, but eventually he'll hit his healing cap and you'll win the battle. I was able to do both quest battles by turn 6. If you get a Night Shroud armor or any item that makes its wearer invisible, you can pair it with a flying spellcaster to destroy massive armies. You cannot have an army of flying units only as you'll lose the battle by default that way, but if you keep a single unit on the ground, you can continue to fight. If the enemy spots your ground unit, they will chase it, but if it's invisible, they will have to search for it first. Be sure to avoid trees as the AI searches those parts first. You can get some ridiculous results with an army composition like this. Shields are an amazing way to burn through the enemy's winds of magic and limited spells. It's especially helpful on a flying lord or hero since you can bait the enemy into casting, then quickly back out to recharge your shield for free and repeat until they run out of casts. A higher tier item doesn't always mean it's better. For example, the Black Periopt is the best arcane item for the vampires, and it outshines the Book of Asher because it generates winds of magic mid-battle for free. Some green tier weapons can be more useful than the blue tier, such as the Brass Cleaver, which gives every unit around the Lord a +8 to melee attack, which is more than double the base stats of zombies. The Scintillating Shield is an amazing item, but if you're up against mostly melee army, then it can be better to equip 2 or 3 Helms of Discord to debuff every attacker around your blob. With 3 Helms of Discord, you almost overlap completely, meaning the enemy will fight with a permanent -24 to melee attack and defense. The Fencer's Blade is a great item when you want your lord to fight against masses of enemy units, since the extra damage is pointless, but the extra attack and melee defense isn't. If your lord hits for 500 damage, but the enemy's small entities have only 500 hit points each, then you don't need more damage, since overkill will do nothing for you. Don't automatically upgrade all of your items, since many of these can be more helpful depending on the situation you're in. The Chalice of Mafleur is one of the best items you can get for the vampires, since they rely heavily on healing cap. This item increases healing cap by 500%, so as long as you can keep up with the incoming damage, the enemy will have a very hard time surviving long enough to get to your healing cap. It's also a great item to cycle between low-level lords and heroes due to the +30% increase to XP gain, helping them reach higher levels much faster. And against armies with a lot of spellcasters, it can be a lifesaver by increasing enemy miscast chance by 100%, meaning they will take massive damage for every spell they cast, even non-overcasted spells. Mad's Map is a situationally amazing item because it increases the movement range of an army by 50. I don't recommend leaving it on an army all the time though, since there's a 20% chance you'll teleport to a random nearby region. Typically, I will use it at the end of my turn by equipping it on an army that is just short of an attack, moving next turn to finish the attack, and then removing the item. It can also help an army moving over a long distance, but again you have to be careful of the 20% chance to teleport to a random spot nearby, which can cost you more time than you might save with the extra 50 movement points. There's also an ancillary you can pick up by looting Empire settlements that I do the same thing with, called the Manservant. Oftentimes, I will equip both Mad's Map and Manservant the turn before to make sure I have enough movement range. Scintillating Shield is the best armor in the game, and it's not even close. The 1000 barrier can easily win fights by itself given enough time and patience. However, its effectiveness increases even more when you pair it with Ward Save like Talisman of Preservation, since Ward Save reduces damage before the barrier is hit, essentially giving you an extra 180 barrier hit points and reducing damage after the barrier goes to 0 by 18%. Don't listen to idiots online trying to tell you the Black Coach is a bad unit. I consistently get hundreds, if not thousands of kills with it. It's an amazing unit if utilized and micromanaged properly. Focus on hitting low mass units like infantry and archers. Don't charge fast projectile units or spears from the front. Keep this thing moving at all times and you'll grow to love it. It's easier to discover new factions through diplomacy than scouting. Join wars with people from all over the map to reveal those factions and then sue for peace when they're willing. Sometimes you'll even get confederations and vassals for free by doing this. When going up against Slaanesh for an offensive siege, if they try to steal one of your units, exit the siege and come back in, and they will have to spend more of their resources to steal another unit. Repeat this until they run out of mana and they won't be able to steal a unit again. If you want to see the campaign these tips came from, click this video for the fully edited version or this playlist for the longer version. Thanks for watching.
Deprivation is sensation.